Hello and welcome to The Game, football podcast from The Times. 2 goals, 1 win and 0 thrills. That was the headline on the front page of the Sunday Times Sports Supplement this weekend as England beat Andorra in the World Cup qualifier. Maybe the first newspaper headline in the history of journalism that no one would disagree with. It's not easy being Thomas Tuchel, is it? But on today's show, we thought we'd give it a go by picking our World Cup 11 if the tournament started right now. We'll also discuss Andre Onana's departure from Manchester United, Daniel Levy's Tottenham exit, hear worries about doping in football, and catch up on the opening weekend in the WSL. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today in the second half of the show, we'll hear from our chief sports correspondent, Matt Lawton. And with me in the studio for the full thing, we've got the football reporter, Kit Shepherd, and the former footballer turned journalist, Gregor Robertson, is here too. Kit, welcome. So nice to have you in the studio, not talking to you from a hotel room in Switzerland as we did during the summer.
I know, it's a change. I have to say this is a very nice new studio. I've been told it's brand new.
Brand new, just for you. Just for you. Now that you're a European Championship winning reporter, yeah, we've got you in. You're a journalist who's actually seen an England team lift a major trophy. So Thomas Tuchel needs all the help he can get. Greg, are you doing well?
I'm good, yeah.
Excited to talk about Elliot Anderson, the one bright spark of the
Let's get straight on to him.
Let's get straight. It was the bright spark, the only bright spark, wasn't it, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, big caveat, they were playing Andorra, but he does look like he belongs, and not just on that stage, but alongside those players.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Nottingham Forest fans will have been saying that for a long, long time, and it's good that the rest of the country agrees.
Is it a very rare case of an actually very simple solution to a problem that has been suggested for such a long time? You know, Gareth Southgate playing Trent Alexander-Arnold in there, talking about inverting fullbacks and things, and we dropped Jude Bellingham deeper, and actually he's been sat there for the last season doing pretty good, and he's going to come in, he's probably start the World Cup. Am I being too simplistic there?
Yeah, well, I suppose his emergence is since the start of last season. He was, he didn't play enough at Newcastle to be considered, so it's really only since the Euros. And it takes a bit of time for him to sort of establish that reputation in the Premier League and being so consistent and reliable and like an all-rounder. And then there's the as I wrote about, the kind of question of balance in midfield as well. If you've not got an out-and-out defensive-minded holding midfielder, who are you playing alongside Declan Rice that you can get a good sense of balance? And I think he's the best option that Tuchel has. So it'd be fascinating to see if he plays against Serbia on Tuesday night, and obviously a more difficult opponent. It's also interesting, Martin raised the point in the column this morning that if John Stones was fit, he might not have
that's
done
what
this
he said, wasn't it?
So.
Yeah, Thomas Tuchel said John Stones was being considered as playing a number 6 for England, which I mean is mental to me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, John Stones is the one solid rock in this defence. Mark Gay obviously looking excellent in the last kind of 18 months.
He obviously really likes Dan Burn too.
But Jesus Christ, if we're going to play Dan Burn at centre back so that we can play John Stones in midfield, like, the plot has been lost already, hasn't it? I mean, Kit, you went from a summer where the build up to England women's Euros defence was chaos and players being dropped and everything like that, and then they promptly go and win the trophy in a very ruthless fashion. Do you have any sympathy with Thomas Tuchel in these scenarios where people, as Gregor said, it's Andorra, you can't kind of learn too much, but it's not the most brilliant start for him as England manager, is it?
No, it's not, and you do have to caveat it with, first of all, they've still won all 4 games, all 4 qualifiers, and it's Andorra, and they're not going to play a team like that in the World Cup. But I think you can say that whoever the opposition has been so far, they have really struggled to break down these kind of mid or low blocks, whether that was in the games at Wembley where they started, or whether it was in that forgettable 1-0 win against Andorra. So yeah, you do have a bit of sympathy, and again, if you want to make the comparison with the women's team, there is evidence there of it all coming together very quickly and very gloriously. But at the moment, it seems like England just don't have that kind of verve and spark that you do need, I suppose, whoever you're playing.
Yeah, I mean, well, as I say, I introed it at the start of the show. Let's get straight into it then, because Martin Samuel, as Gregor, you talked about there on the Times website, saying Tuchel is selecting on form that is 7 years out of date. Paul Joyce writing in the Times with a headline on his piece, "Joyless England can't afford a repeat on Serbia on Tuesday night." So I just thought, why not? The World Cup starts tomorrow. Let's all be Thomas Tuchel. Let's pick our teams. Do you want me to go first, Gregor, or do you want to take the lead? You're the former footballer. Do you want to take the lead?
Go on then.
Let's hear it.
Dean Henderson. No, it's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. I knew you wouldn't take that next. It's Pickford all day.
Your England team to start the World Cup. Go.
Pickford. Pickford in goal, Reece James right back, John Stones, Mark Gay centre half, Jed Spence,
interesting.
Declan Rice, Elliot Anderson midfield, Saka on the right, Bellingham number 10, Anthony Gordon on the left, Harry Kane up front.
Harry Kane, very interesting. Kit, do you want to go?
This is going to be very disappointing. We've picked 10 of the 11.
Oh,
Same players.
no, it's a good thing you're on side. But go on.
Who's different?
So who's your one different?
I've got Lewis Skelly at left back instead of Jed Spence.
I always said Kit was a really smart guy, you know.
Yeah, honestly, don't need less of this. Right, anyway, well, here's mine.
What's yours?
Complete nonsense. David Seaman in goal. No, I'm joking. Pickford in goal. Trent at right back. Stones, Gay, Lewis Skelly, Anderson, Rice, Saka, Palmer, Morgan Rogers, Kane.
Okay.
No Jude Bellingham.
It's funny you say
Get
that.
both men, Palmer and Rogers, in the same team who do the same celebration, and they can do it at the same time as England win the trophy. But I'm being I'm not trying to bait you with the whole...
It's funny you say that. Like, and you leave Bellingham out. He's the person I sort of hovered about and kind of questioned the most.
And you love him.
I do. I love it. It was the kind of... I was just thinking back to the clutch moments, to the overhead kick in the Euros, to like just when standing there saying, who else? Like, it's true. He just finds big moments in the biggest games on the biggest stage. So like, I feel it would be ridiculous to leave him out. So you could also drop him deep, and it would be a question of who the opposition is, whether it's a team to break down, as we're saying, it's been often the case. You could possibly play him deeper. And Cole Palmer, I have underneath my team with lots of question marks beside him. He's the one person. Like, people talk about Foden. No, I'd like to get Eze in an England team, but I think Anthony Gordon as well. I spent all of the Euros banging on about having an out-and-out left winger who's like direct and has pace. And some people will say that could be Rashford too, but he's not shown it yet. And I think Gordon is reliable, really industrious. And he has taken opportunities when they've been presented to him as well. So, yeah, some people question that and Spence. And I think Spence is like one of the best defenders in England.
What, as a fullback, as in one-on-one?
Yeah. I mean, you saw him in the Super Cup. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Super Cup game. Like, giving Paris Saint-Germain wingers forwards, like saying, "Go on, beat me down the line," and then he turns on the afterburners, and he can join in going forward too. I think when you look at the makeup of that defence, there's no longer the big stature players. John Stones is the only guy. Like, Gahey is becoming that, and he played in the last tournament. Reece James hasn't really played big tournament football, and there's always a question mark about his fitness. But you saw his deliveries in that game against Andorra just at the weekend. Like, you forget he's almost on a par with Trent, with the kind of wand of a right foot. Cross across, not just the one for the goal, the one in the first half that he whipped across, like just such pace with the inside of his foot. But he's slightly more reliable defensively. But also, I just think having someone like Lewis Skelly is a real talent, but I think Jed Spence is a better defender. So I looking at the balance of the back four, that's why I went for Spence.
I thought I was going to get dogs abuse for leaving Bellingham out, but I think there is a part of England's fans as well, conscience, that is like, yes, he can. It's a both things can be true, Gregor. He can be box office. He can be the saviour. He is absolutely a world talent. But there's part of me that was just picking this team, going, I think they'd be better with Palmer in there as a number 10. The other thing I'd say about Cole Palmer, he's never played there for England. He's never had that chance. All the others have had the chance. I mean, even thinking about this conversation, what a fall from grace Phil Foden is having, by the way.
Yeah.
That it wasn't even. I was going right, Saka, Palmer, Morgan Rogers, or I'd like to get Eze in there, or Anthony Gordon's direct. Bellingham, obviously. I've gone 6 players before I've even listed Phil Foden.
Yeah.
We're at a stage where Phil Foden might not go to the World Cup. Crazy? Too crazy? Too far?
It's not impossible. It's not impossible, but I think he will go. I think, over the course of this season, we'll see Phil Foden emerge again. But you're right. Another one for me was even Saka. Like, you have questioned Palmer could play ahead of Saka. Like, that seems.
But I think the thing for me with picking Saka is that he's almost like the most consistent.
Yes.
Creative force in England's team under Gareth Southgate. There was all these debates about, should we play Palmer? Should we drop Saka? Saka was always the one that the ball went to all the time. Go on, Bukayo, do something with it. Please, God, do something with it. And he was always the one who delivered, actually. So that was the why I was like, it's got to be Saka. And then Morgan Rogers for me, that running ability, that ability to take the ball, pace, that make something happen in the 70th minute. I don't think he's as good as Jude Bellingham, but I think he's got in his locker, for the cliched, that ability to just make something happen.
It does. Gibbs White does too. And when Gibbs White comes on, he's like someone who makes an impact. He adds energy, as an injection of like energy and intent.
Yeah.
And that's valuable, and it might be something from the bench, but there's so many. Johnny said it when we spoke on Thursday, like having those big guns unavailable. It'll be interesting to see whether this is a better England performance. I don't think any of the players we're speaking about. Madueke was good.
Yeah.
Madueke is purposeful and like direct as well. So he's someone as well you would definitely consider. But I don't think Eze or Rashford really grasped the opportunity. So when the big guns are available, he'll probably turn back to them.
Do we lack any left-footedness with Jed Spence at left back?
That's a good point, because I spent the summer talking about Kieran Trippier, but there was no one outside him. That's the point. Like he never had a left winger in front of him. Yeah. So if Jed Spence does have him, the fact that he's not left-footed matters less.
Lewis Hall, if he's fit, would that be the
Lewis Skelly?
Lewis Skelly.
Yeah. MLS.
Yeah. Lewis Skelly would be most people's pick. He probably will play, but as I say, I just think, are England really going to play with an inverted fullback in World Cup tournament football, like with very little time in the training ground to drill that kind of formation and system? I think it's brave. I'm not sure.
Kit, who were you sweating on when you're picking your team?
Left back's always it feels like for generations been the position of kind of angst for England, and I think again, kind of like Saka. I think Saka's kind of got to the stage where people just put him in a team and don't even think about it. Are we still there with Harry Kane as well?
That's a good point.
I think we're tying ourselves in knots if you bring the Harry Kane has one more tournament. Let's just not argue about it. Sure. Who are you picking instead?
Good question. I mean, maybe not Ollie Watkins
because that's the thing. Like a year ago, you might have gone, well, Ollie Watkins. Ivan Toney's disappeared off the radar. But
your question, and your question this morning is, if the World Cup's tomorrow, who are you picking? So you have to go in current form, and like, as we're saying, Ollie Watkins hasn't really been ripping up recently. The season just started, but it all does, and that's why Martin's column is like, it makes sense. It always comes down to form. Like we can. I've said all along, the number of options England have, and particularly in forward areas, is just ridiculous. It comes down to form and balance. And at the moment, with those three big players out injured, it was an opportunity, and I don't really think anyone other than Madueke took it.
Is there any part where it doesn't come down to form though? Because we've seen with England teams in the Southgate era, like Harry Maguire's probably the best example, being chastised and ridiculed time and time again for his performance of Man United. Put him next to Stones, certainly up until the Qatar World Cup, and there was a great partnership.
But that's because there's a big hole in the team there. Like, I don't think that's the case up front in forward area. So it's a perfectly valid point, and it's true about Harry Maguire. But I think unless they were playing Harry Maguire because they had to, there was no one else really.
And also, listen, there was Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank spoken in the last week or so about what a massive miss he was at the Euros in the dressing room, Harry Maguire, in terms of his leadership and things, stepping forward in clutch moments, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and presence. You look at the back four with Harry Maguire in it, and him and John Stones have played a lot of tournament football, and they're big and experienced defenders. Whatever back four England play, you do need to consider those things. I think experience, presence, and sort of reliability. That's we're talking about, and Martin Samuel and all of our colleagues have said, Thomas Tuchel brought in, short deal, go and win the World Cup, and this whole idea was that he was supposed to just build on what was there before, which was this solid team squad with a winning mentality. He just couldn't quite get over the line. And I feel like we've gone a couple of months in and unpicked everything, and we're now at a stage where we know with the centre-back pairing, the striker, the keeper, and maybe Elliot Anderson's made a case for it being short. Don't know anyone else in the team. We've just debated for about 5-10 minutes here. I'm sure listeners are going, no, I'd get him in. Oh my God, Tom, you're an idiot. You've got to play Jude Bellingham. That's not a great place to be, is it? What are we, 9 months till the start of the World Cup? Not a clue what 5-6 places are in the team? Yeah, but some of them are because there's so many options. It's a fair point. And it feels like England, let's be honest, it feels like they've gone backwards. Despite stinking the place out in the Euros, they got to the final. But it feels like since Gareth Southgate's left, they have they have gone backwards. But that's
so
part
glad,
of that.
So glad you said it. I didn't need to say it.
Part of that's to do with the expectation. Part of that's to do with the things that Johnny spoke about on Thursday about like the standard, the quality of the opponent. How do you really impress or wow or have like, you know, performances fizzing with energy when you're playing teams like Andorra every week? So you know, that's why Tuesday's game against Serbia is important. Like, it's been built up as if this is like, you know, you're playing against Spain or France. It's not the case, but it's your only competitive fixture of any sort of standard or, you know, opposition of any standing between now and the World Cup. So you know, he needs a good performance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more international games to come. There's another international break in October with a friendly against Wales before another qualifier against Latvia. Then the home game against Serbia in November, followed by a trip to Albania. So there's a lot more games to come for Thomas Tuchel. But I genuinely, Kit, what do you think about, again, not necessarily just always linking it back to the women's success and things, but as I mentioned already, Serena Wiegman went through loads of changes before this tournament, got it right at the time.
And started badly.
Badly. And there is an element at tournament football where it's just a bit like what we talked about with Bellingham. Like, he's just going to show up in those moments where it really matters. Like, not only did England not have a calm build-up to the Women's Euros this summer, they also didn't even play that well at the Euros. But I think Chloe Kelly stepped up and scored the penalties because she was ready for the pressure. Missed one and scored on the rebound, if you want to be pedantic. Hannah Hampton, having not really had the chance to prove before that she could perform under pressure, was able to. So I think with selection as well for major tournaments, as well as trying to work out the combinations and the tactics, there's also a little bit of working out who's got the bottle, who's not going to shrink under the pressure, because you're not going to be able to replicate pressure against Andorra or even against this Serbia game.
But that's part of my problem is that, and you know, I've managed to go over 15 minutes without mentioning Sir Gareth Southgate, but thankfully Greg has put in it already that we can all just admit it. We miss him, Gareth. We're really sorry. Well, I'm not, because I believed in you all along. It's all these other chumps who thought you weren't an absolute genius at the time. But that's partly my problem, Kit, is that we're heading back to this point where you just go, oh, you pick the clutch players, you pick the superstars, they'll get you over the line. That Thomas Tuchel was brought in to like tactify this England team. He was brought in to like
tactify us. Does that work?
I don't know. I've thrown it in there. We can work it out by the end of the show. Okay. But he was brought in for these moments where we just can't get over the line against Italy and Spain in these finals. We get outthought. We've got no plan B. Let's get in a top coach like Thomas Tuchel. And after a couple of months, he's going, right, let's get the big lads in. Let's do long throws. And then we were sat in here going, we'll just play the clutch players and they'll get us through in big moments. He was supposed to be the one with like plan B and plan C and plan D, who would work it out, in-game solutions, good substitutions. And he looks like he hasn't got a bloody clue. And he's talking about, we'll get there in the end. We'll go back to basics. It's like, we should never have let Southgate go in the first place. It's absolute nonsense, isn't it? I mean, have I lost the plot already? This is what England does to you. This is what England does to you.
It was time.
You have. Gregor says.
It was time for
head
him
in
to
hands.
go.
You have.
It was time for him to go for his sake as much as anything.
No, but my point. But do you not agree with my point about?
Of course,
that's what Tuchel was brought in to do. And we're sat here going, just pick the big guy, pick the stars, and
But it comes back to the same thing about the opposition. Like who's he played yet? The Senegal game was awful, but it was like after the season, changing the team up. It was never going to be an easy run up for him. It's like part of it is a walk in the park, and then the other part of it is that they're not really being tested. So you want no matter forgetting all that, you still want to have seen more. You want to see more. You want to see more than 11 shots against than England landed against Andorra. So
scored from 2 crosses. One of them was an own goal.
But then there's a kind of other side to this. Is it's been such a shift in terms of like. The narrative he's trying to, the way he's trying to direct the narrative, he's like, Gareth Southgate was like warm and embracing. He's been like the complete opposite. He says about Rashford, I agree. He's not delivering the wow performances that we hope for in an England jersey. Like he just says it as it is, and he's also kind of trying to hark back to or trying to create an English identity. But the English identity is like things that are the basics he's talking about, like being direct, like long throws,
big lads,
crosses into the box. It's not really probably what the FA were hoping for when they hired someone to, as you say, in your words, tactify the team.
Maybe they should have given him an interview. Maybe, I don't know. Asked him what he was planning to do. I don't. It just it
might
like
sound nice though hearing a German guy coming and saying, I want to see an English create the English identity, the Premier League on the national stage. It's not that easy.
It's impossible. It's deluded. It's absolute nonsense. Anyway, we'll leave it there for now on England because I'm sure we'll come back to it on Thursday. Listeners, I'm sure you have views on my nonsense being spouted over the last 15 minutes and the more considered views of Kit and Gregor, but do get in touch with me with your starting 11s for the World Cup. tom.clark@thetimes.co.uk. Another matter separately away from the internationals, Gregor. We thought the transfer window was over. We thought all the deals had been done, but it looks like Andre Onana is leaving Manchester United on loan to Turkish side Trabzonspor. Their window still open for a couple of days. What do we make of this? I mean, Manchester United fans, I know a lot of you get in touch sometimes saying, it's too critical, blah, blah, blah. This is an absolute stinker, isn't it? The Andre Onana saga, the story of his career at Manchester United, the pursuit of him, getting rid of David De Gea. It's a shocker, isn't it? At least we can all agree on this one, surely, if we don't agree on my views on the England manager.
Yeah. The first part I'd agree with. I wouldn't be too revisionist on David De Gea.
David De Gea?
He's a brilliant shot stopper.
4-time United Player of the Season, Kit.
In that golden era of Man United that he was there.
Look what happened.
This comes back to Ederson's the conversation with Ederson. David De Gea left because of his failure at the start of the season when Ten Hag got the job to play it from the back.
And they forgot that you do still need to save the shots that come at you. Yeah,
he made his fair share of clangers, though, De Gea.
I'm not having David De Gea, who, by the way, then joins Fiorentina. And do you know who was the goalkeeper in the Serie A team of the season last season, Kit? David De Bloody Gea, that's who.
I'm going to try and think of another one.
You were, I could see you being good. But
reform.
It is a shocker, isn't it, Gregor? This the Manchester United are now going into the season with a new signing from Belgium. Who knows whether he's going to be any good? And Altay Bayindir, who in my mind is one of the worst, second choice keepers in any team in the Premier League.
It's certainly a risk, 23-year-old.
He might be great. I hope he is. But it's a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, and like we've seen, Amarim wasn't a mug. Like, he came from an Inter Milan team who he performed brilliantly for and went deep in the Champions League.
Onana, you mean? Sorry, you said Amarim. Yeah.
Sorry, Onana, yeah. And then I was reading a piece where Van der Sar was talking about him, his time at Ajax as well, and kind of he was so excited about him coming to the Premier League. He thought so highly of him. Like, Van der Sar knows his stuff as well. So, like, there is an aspect of this about just the word I always reach for is the vortex that is there at Old Trafford. Like, players of talent get sucked into it. He came. And then there's the whole conversation again about muddled thinking at Manchester United, and Ten Hag looked like he was starting to want to. He signed a goalkeeper to play it from the back, and then he realised he didn't have any defenders to pass to when you're playing out from the back. So even his kind of remit changed when he joined Manchester United. So a lot of muddled thinking at that football club for a long time, and that ultimately, players can suffer from that as well. So I hope that Onana goes on and does well somewhere else. But when Manchester United have paid the best part of £50 million for a goalkeeper, and they're shipping him out a couple of years later, it isn't a good look.
To Trabzonspor on loan. I mean, it's a terrible look. It's worse than a bad look. But listen, guys, I'm just, I struggle with the modern world. 2025 is a scary place. I just want to party like it's 2018 all over again. David De Gea in goal for Manchester United and Gareth Southgate as manager for England. They were better times, simpler times. Anyway, there's loads more still to come on this episode of the Game Podcast, but we're going to take a little break. Greg, I'm going to test you again on Bill Edgar's quiz, as we enjoyed it so much on Thursday. It's his quiz that you can take part in on the Times website now, all about players and which nation they represented. Saido Berahino played for West Brom and Stoke, but made 133 appearances for which country? I'm not going to give you any of the hints just yet. I'm going to see if you can get it in the break. Listeners, come back and see if they can get it right. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark, and I've got Kit Shepherd and Gregor Robertson with me in the studio. Gregor, thank God you're here, back on the money with the answer to the quiz question. Saido Berahino represented which nation at international level? Burundi. Very good. Listeners, he did need the 4 options before he got the answer. I will just say that. Let's get cracking because we've got loads more to discuss on the show, and we're joined now by the Times' chief sports correspondent, Matt Lawton, to discuss 2 big stories of the past week. Matt, hello.
Hi, Tom.
Thanks very much for taking the time to join us. Let's talk first about a huge breaking story that happened late on Thursday night. Daniel Levy departing from Tottenham. This was one of those rare stories. It kind of shows the magnitude of the move and the kind of man's reputation in football that we were all on the Times editing floor having a little debrief. One of my editing colleagues was just about to leave, handing over, and someone suddenly went, "Behind me, Daniel Levy's left Tottenham." Oh my God, that's absolutely massive. And I thought, what a statement of the bloke himself and his position within football that we were all so shocked. Matt, the story has progressed massively since then, and there's a latest story from you on the Times website now, but I wanted to just take you back to Thursday and kind of give your reaction first to the significance of Levy's departure and a little bit about what you think he achieved at Tottenham and his standing within the game.
Yeah, look, as we know, he was the longest serving chairman of any Premier League football club, and had established himself. He had a reputation as a very uncompromising, tough sort of deal maker. A lot of clubs really didn't like trying to deal with him. He was so sort of, Simon Jordan did a column, didn't he, in the Sunday Times, where he just talked about the sort of attention to detail and the just the way he would try and drive the best deal for his club. So he had that reputation. He was a very hard man to get even remotely close to as a journalist. Even when my days as being a chief football correspondent, I don't know I've ever had a conversation with him.
Right.
He didn't really engage with the media. He used Donna Cullen, his kind of comms person, to do that on his behalf. But while there are, and I do sympathise with the frustrations that Tottenham fans have had over the years for the lack of success on the pitch, and so many managerial changes and great players that they sign, they're leaving at the right price. Perhaps wasn't always a huge fight to keep these top players and instead go for the profit. He does leave the club in a very good in very good financial health. They have got the best training ground in certainly in the London area. It is the one, as Martin Samuel referenced the other day, it's the one that England choose to use before they play games at Wembley, and the stadium is magnificent, isn't it? And the way he's done that is impressive. They are an extremely well-run football club, but the Lewis family, and it did come as a shock. Nobody saw it coming. It's one of those rare stories that just drops out of the ether that nobody has anticipated. I always remember a similar story when it was Rupert Murdoch trying to buy Manchester United, and I was on an island trip in Dublin and was the Manchester correspondent at the time, and it was just one of those stories that just hit you right between the eyes because there'd not been a whiff of it, and there hadn't been a whiff of Levy leaving.
And he himself, that was one of your stories in the days after, wasn't it? That he only found out about his own exit on the morning of Thursday, which is quite a significant part of this narrative, isn't it? That you only find out.
Yeah, I do wonder if he kind of saw it coming a little bit, because there had been the changes. They brought in the new chief executive, and perhaps he did feel like his power was slightly being eroded, and perhaps he'd felt that way since Joe Lewis handed control to his family, to his children in particular, Vivian and Charlie. So you wonder if he could kind of see the writing on the wall, because he did do that overlap appearance with Gary Neville, which again was such a rare sort of media appearance for him. And it looked like he might have been trying to get ahead of the story a little bit, but no, I don't think everything we were told on Thursday night from people close to the Lewis family was that no, that this came very much as a shock. All happened in the space of a few hours, and as we reported on Saturday morning, his wife quit on the spot as well. She worked as his assistant, and had this role in the director's box on match day. So no, as a family, I don't think the Levys saw it coming. Like, the whole thing is very complex. His son works for the sort of investment arm of the Lewis business empire, and continues to do so. His wife's brother is still the player liaison officer, and I think it caught them all off guard.
And then into today, then, on the website this morning, we've got a headline on a piece by you. Spurs reject takeover interest from Amanda Staveley and Chinese groups. The stand first, then, just to give listeners a bit more detail. Clubs say they were forced to clarify the position after media speculation, that old brilliant get-out phrase there, media speculation following Daniel Levy's exit as chairman, insist they have no intention of entertaining offers. Do we feel like this is then the start of a second chapter to this story, Matt, or how do you see this playing out?
Well, no, it was really weird. So last night I was working on something else, and while trying to watch a bit of the tennis, and this story broke on Sky News. Mark Kleiman, who's their business correspondent, that Amanda Staveley, the former Newcastle director, was due to make a statement today saying that she was not going to be submitting a bid for Tottenham, because there's been a lot of rumours since she left Newcastle that she might be trying to put a consortium together to make a bid for Spurs, because the obvious reason being that there were lots of rumours really about whether the Lewis family had an appetite to stick around. Joe Lewis is now 88. Were the family really that interested in running a Premier League football club, and so on? So there's been whispers for ages about Staveley. And then that's followed up by a briefing from the people close to the Lewis family that this is nothing to see here. She's not making a bid. Blah 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 blah. So I actually put a tweet out about 8 o'clock saying this feels like the ultimate non-story. Someone not making a bid. Then at midnight, another message dropped in my WhatsApp inbox saying that Tottenham have now had to make a statement. And the reason that Staveley was making a statement and the reason Tottenham are making a statement, and I'm not going to try and explain them because I don't really understand them myself, but there are certain rules that apply around UK takeovers, takeovers in the UK.
Right.
So Tottenham had to make a statement saying at midnight last night that two groups, Staveley's group, PCP, and this Chinese consortium, had, since Levy left on Thursday, made kind of preliminary inquiries about the situation at Spurs. Hadn't made an offer, and they were rejected. And actually, the messaging from the Lewis camp since Thursday has been this club is not for sale, because the moment that story dropped on Thursday, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of journalists, I had lots of people contacting me saying this person's buying it and that person's buying it, and so on. And Staveley has indeed now issued this statement today saying that they are not bidding. And the view of the Lewis camp last night and indeed this morning, and I did speak to someone this morning, is that this hopefully puts that to bed. They don't want to sell. They're in it for the long haul. They've created this new leadership structure. Levy has gone, and they're now hoping to prove with the new leadership team that they can actually transfer that financial success and that good management of the football club into success on the football pitch. So it would be, if they were now to accept an offer down the line, and look, and I think ultimately every football club is for sale. Right. If somebody makes a daft offer, then there aren't many football club owners, unless you're looking at people like Steve Gibson at Middlesbrough, proper sort of long-serving fans, who would continue to reject the possibility of a sale. I think just about anyone else would sell. But anyway, they're saying they're not going to sell, and they're saying they're in it for the long haul. So we have to take them at their word at the moment, and believe that there is nothing happening there. There was a very prominent American billionaire who was linked to the Chelsea takeover a few years ago, whose name popped up, with me last week, and I ended up speaking to his guys in New York on Friday, and again, they're not interested. And I can only assume, Tom, it's because the Enoch guys, the Lewis family, have made it very clear that it's not for sale.
Yeah. Absolutely fascinating. We'll see what happens with Tottenham. Matt, before you go, I wanted to talk about another big story from last week. This was one of your very own, an investigation on the Times website, the headline of which was "Football's Doping Problem, a Testing System Not Fit for Purpose." Fresh doubts raised over anti-doping efforts, with players not required to provide whereabouts on days off or on holiday, while the majority of out-of-competition tests are conducted at training. That's the very simplified headline version of what is a very complex story. Give the listeners a sense of what you discovered in writing this story and what you think some of these problems are.
Yeah, look, this was, as you know, I write a lot about doping, in particular in Olympic sports and in things like cycling, and have done for years. And obviously know a lot of people in that sphere. And for some time, prominent people in that world have been saying to me, when are you going to look at football? When are you going to look at the systems that are in place there? They're not even trying. So I did actually take the opportunity this summer, because it's not a World Cup or Olympics or a European Championship summer. I thought, you know what, I'm going to look at the football situation and discovered a lot of things that I didn't even realise. And I was alarmed by the fact that, despite the fact that football, certainly in Europe, is the biggest sport, the stakes are highest, the rewards are greatest, and yet the commitment to anti-doping is frankly pathetic.
Just Matt, but just before you go on, just to give people a sense of like what you think should be the kind of standard bearer for testing in football, because obviously I touched on it there in reading that kind of Stanford stout. But what should be happening? Because you're saying here about it, things what you found was shocking. But what do you think should be happening? What should a footballer kind of expect to be dealing with on a testing level?
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is, Josh Kerr, the British Olympic silver medalist, world champion, he has to provide details of where he's at every day. He has to provide an hour of a slot, and give his whereabouts every day. He earns a fraction of what Premier League footballers make. Why aren't Premier League footballers required to do the same thing? Because the fact is, as I say, football is, and please don't anyone tell me, and I know Gregor played professionally, but please don't tell me that it's a skill game and doping is less advantageous in a sport like football. That's just not true, and certainly not true anymore when the physical requirements of playing football at the very highest level, with the way that the game is played these days, with the way that everyone's supposed to track back and press and all this kind of stuff. These guys, and I've seen the changes in footballer physiques and fitness levels in the last 30 years. They are phenomenal athletes.
Yeah.
We used to laugh when we watched superstars in the 70s that the footballers were never very good at it. I think they'd be brilliant at it now. I think they are among the greatest athletes on the planet, top-level footballers. So the fact of the matter is, it would be, if a footballer did want to dope, as the current system exists, it would be incredibly easy to cheat.
Right.
With the right expertise, it would be so easy, because there are massive gaps when they do not need to provide any information as to where they are. For example, an entire summer holiday. If your club is not training for a couple of days, a lot of these these most effective drugs, the window of detection is 24, 48 hours. So if you've got a couple of days off training, bingo. If you want to go and do some growth hormone or some testosterone because you're 7 months into the season, you're coming up to your Champions League semi-final, you're fighting for the Premier League title, and you're a bit knackered and you're carrying a couple of injuries. So this is where performance-enhancing drugs can be massively effective. And I just think the system right now is hugely open to abuse. Now, the fact of the matter is, in the UK at the moment, and we've written about this, football, rugby and cricket runs its own doping programs. It employs UKAD to do the testing,
right,
but it's in charge of its own doping programs. To be compliant with the next WADA code, I think they will have to hand that control back to UKAD. And the point of writing the piece is, at that point, if not before, things need to change.
Right.
Premier League footballers and indeed professional footballers need to be held to the same standards as other elite sports stars in this country. It's a joke that right now there is such a sort of, lax system.
Yeah.
It's just not right.
And did you get the sense in writing this story, because obviously when we do these kind of big stories, you have to present your information to all the various governing bodies and things, get responses and stuff. Did you get any response that made you feel like things would change off the back of this story?
No, because the fact of the matter is, it took a couple of months sending freedom of information requests, asking questions. They knew exactly, between the FA and UKAD, they knew exactly what I was talking about. They knew exactly what I was looking at. And despite the fact that I know all of them very well, at no point did anyone think, come on, let's sit Matt down and let's explain what we do and the efforts we do make. And they didn't. And the reason they didn't is because they knew they'd lose that argument. They knew that there are massive holes in the system. And my key point, and even then, the FA issued me that statement at the end of last week saying that they think doping in football is rare. My point is that they can't possibly know.
Yeah,
it's impossible to know if it's rare because they're not actually monitoring it properly. The reason the FA made no attempt, and indeed UKAD made no attempt to sit down and try and explain things to me from their point of view, despite all the questions they were getting from me, and they know me well. I deal with both bodies and have a lot of time for both bodies. They know that. But they made no attempt to actually say, right, what are you actually writing here? And is there anything we can do to convince you that the systems we have in place are effective? They didn't do that. They've just let that. They've just taken it on the chin, and probably feel a little bit fortunate that within the next couple of hours of publishing the story, the Levy story is broken. But the fact of the matter is, I won't let it rest. I'll stay on them on this one because it's not good enough. And actually, I've been contacted by some extremely prominent people in anti-doping since we ran that piece, just saying, "Good grief, I had no idea that is ridiculous."
Matt, I think the quote from Gordon Taylor that jumped out to me as well, because actually, although that was maybe 20 years ago that quote was from.
Gordon, 2009,
2009. Okay, as former head of the PFA, just essentially saying this is not a problem in football, and actually reading that, I think probably that attitude has not changed in that time.
Yeah.
So you're right. You're right. You laid it out at the start. There is no reason why, given the rewards on offer and the the athleticism required to be a footballer, there's no reason why some footballers would not turn to performance enhancing drugs. But the attitude within football is that this doesn't happen.
Yeah. And the thing is, look, it all comes down to cost. The reason they can't do it, the reason UKAD aren't doing it, is because it's expensive, right? And it's not just about what they would perceive to be intrusion and being a pain in the backside. If Premier League footballer has to provide their whereabouts every day, and because at the moment it's all done for them. All the clubs are required to do is provide the FA with details of what days they're training. Right. So it would be, a huge amount of admin involved and a huge amount of cost. And as I said in the piece, the FA pay UKAD £1.5 million a year to do their testing. This is a sport, as we reported last week, that spent £3 billion on players in the last transfer window. They're not trying. It's embarrassing that they spend £1.5 million on drug testing. Players should be required to provide their whereabouts every day because they are professional sports stars and they have their hours of training. It takes 3 minutes on an app on your phone to update your whereabouts, to provide a daily slot, and it can be 6 till 7 in the morning at your house every day. And then it can be the hotel that you're at for your holiday or whatever. It's not difficult. The Keely Hodgkinsons, the Josh Kerrs, the Geraint Thomases do it every day of their lives. And I don't see why footballers are somehow protected by this when I think the sport is as ripe for doping as any other.
Yeah, really.
Go
on, Gregor. Did you?
I used to have to do that.
Did you have to do tests, or did you just tell people?
But also, if you were ill, and that was one of your allotted days where you should have been at training, you would have to give a time
That's right.
and a location and your address and stuff. But there was pushback then for even having to do that.
Right.
People thought this was, why are we having to do this? This is, there was a lot of pushback. So there will be again, undoubtedly. But, I think Matt's right.
Really interesting. Matt, as you say, you're not going to let this one drop. We'll be keeping on top of it as an issue and on the situation at Tottenham. So listeners, make sure you're following Matt and get yourself a Time subscription to hear the latest on both of those issues. Matt, we'll let you go. Thank you very much for joining us on The Game.
Pleasure.
Absolutely fascinating to hear from our chief sports correspondent, Matt Lawton. Let's finish with some women's football. It's been a right sprawling show, this, hasn't it, Gregor? Goalkeepers, England picks, drugs in football. Absolutely amazing. Let's finish with some actual football, some goals, some passes, some results, some wins, some loses, and all that kind of stuff. Kit, Women's Super League got underway on Friday night. Chelsea, the champions, beating Manchester City 2-1. Loads of other things to talk about. What were the big kind of talking points from the opening weekend?
Yeah, well, let's start with Chelsea. Much the same as last year, not necessarily playing brilliantly, but finding a way to win against Manchester City, a title contender. Probably positives for both teams. The fact that Man City competes with Chelsea, they can definitely take things from that. The fact they didn't get anything at Stamford Bridge does feel like an opportunity missed. Saturday was probably the most interesting game, kind of going into the weekend. It was kind of, we were billing it as almost like old money v new money. Yeah. Arsenal against London City Lionesses. Obviously, everyone knows about Arsenal in the women's game. London City are the big spenders, no affiliated men's team. And
promoted from last season.
So first standalone club in the WSL. And for the first 20 to 25 minutes, London City were probably the better team. They went 1-0 up. It was a close game, but they went 1-0 up with a penalty, and you couldn't complain with that. And kind of showed they're here to stay. They're not as good as a team like Arsenal yet, and that's why Arsenal came back and won 4-1. But by the standards of newly promoted teams, London City mean business, and they should, with the amount of money they've spent. And then we had 4 games yesterday. The pick of them was Everton winning yet another Merseyside derby. In women's football, Everton dominate that fixture. That's 8 games unbeaten, of which they've won 6, and they've also.
But this was quite a win, 4-1.
Yeah, and they played. It was at Anfield. They played 6-1-6 at Anfield. Yeah. So obviously Liverpool are traditionally the bigger club in that city, but in women's football, it's Everton at the moment.
And Ornella Vignola for Everton scoring a hat-trick at Anfield. I mean, in terms of being an Everton hero, that's pretty much secured her place in the Everton pantheon for life, hasn't it?
Yeah, and the stat doing the rounds yesterday, which is a brilliant stat, is she is the first Everton player, men's or women's, to score a hat-trick against Liverpool since Dixie Dean in 1931. So
stat.
Yeah, right up there. And Everton are a one to watch this season. We've obviously heard a lot about the investment in the club with the Freaking Group from the men's side, but they also seem pretty committed to the women's team. They've done similar stuff at Roma, really lifted Roma women up, and yeah, there's a lot of potential with Everton women playing at Goodison Park this year, signing, kind of unearthing players like Vignola, who wasn't really on the radar. And yeah, on the other hand, Liverpool, we praised them in the men's game for how they're so in such rude financial health, but the difference between the men and the women is the men are at the top of the table, and Liverpool women, who try and have the same financially sustainable approach, are just in mid-table. So they're one to watch as well, but for maybe not such positive reasons.
And in terms of the established famous names now after that England triumph, the second European Championship triumph, are there any hangovers going into this season in terms of some of the players? You know, Millie Bright back for Chelsea, Aggie Beever-Jones scoring for Chelsea, Ella Toone on the score sheet for Manchester United, of course. I mean, are there issues going into this season that, you know, maybe listeners who are only familiar with the England team when it comes to the women's game can kind of latch onto into the club season as well?
Well, listeners who watched in the summer will probably remember half the team seemed like they're playing for injuries, which was very lauded, kind of rightly, as very heroic, but it kind of paying the price now in a way. Lucy Bronze played the whole tournament in the summer with a fractured tibia. She's not available. Lauren James also injured from a injury picked up in the summer. Leah Williamson has been in a knee brace for a worryingly long time for something that's been billed to us as a kind of clean-up knee procedure. So that's one to watch as well. So there's kind of some big names out. But there are still some performing. Ella Toone, as you say, scoring. Aggie Beever-Jones is a really interesting one. It's who I kind of wrote about from the Chelsea City game on Friday night, because she's in a strange spot with England. Obviously, in the summer, Aggie's a striker. We talked, obviously, a lot about Russo in the summer, and then Michelle Agiman, who was the teenager that came from nowhere. Beaver Jones is kind of in the middle where she's only 22, so she's not as refined a centre forward as Russo is yet, but she's also a little bit older than Agyemang, so she's not quite that raw kind of really exciting talent that's come from nowhere. But she's arguably could be the best of the three once all said is done. She's really versatile. She can play across the front line. She's quite a natural finisher. So she was in the squad this summer, didn't play so much, but maybe
she came on a couple of times, didn't she?
Yeah.
But she didn't get that super sub label in the way that Agyemang
exactly
did.
And it's been sort of similar at Chelsea, because Chelsea have such incredible depth in the forward positions. It's not so much the case at the moment because James is injured, Myra Ramirez, who's another of their top strikers, is injured, Sam Kerr's just coming back from 20 months out, so the path's kind of clear for Beaver Jones to kind of be Chelsea starting number 9. And if she keeps scoring, then Serena Wiegman's got a really nice problem to have, where you've got to work out how to get Russo, Aggie and Michelle Agyemang all in one team.
And Agyemang is on loan at Brighton,
right?
Yeah.
Yes. So
how could Arsenal? How could Arsenal let her go back on loan
again
after that summer?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Gregor. Obviously, I'm not in charge of a football club, and never have been, and I can see why. Matter of time. I can see why they've done it, because she was at Brighton last year and had a decent loan spell, and they're a bit like Brighton men, Brighton women. They're seen as this very upwardly mobile, resourceful club with fantastic facilities and going in the right direction. So it's a good place for Agyemang to develop, and Arsenal do have a lot of forwards that can offset not having Agyemang. But even so, as we talked about Agyemang this summer, she can just do things that no other player can, and that includes players like Russo. She's just this incredible mix of physicality, of speed, of finesse. And I just think, why wouldn't you want her just to throw her on and maybe start some games as well? It's a long season for Arsenal.
I mean, even in a cynically commercial view as well, you think they'd maybe try and harvest that.
Yeah, she became the most famous person in the England team. She's absolutely massive during the summer.
Go back to Brighton then.
But maybe the idea is that she plays all the time for Brighton and maybe has a season where she scores 15 goals or something, and then next summer she comes in as if it's a new signing, and they're like, haha, we had this all along. Perfectly planned. We will see what the future holds for Michelle Agyemang and the rest of the England stars in the WSL. We'll leave it there for now. Kit Shepherd and Gregor Robertson, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you too for Matt Lawton for joining us as well. We hope you've enjoyed this show. Thank you for listening. We'll be back later in the week. We'll see you then.